Chapter 2620, A Weak Point. Chapter 2620, A Weak Point in the Sky. The musical storms enveloped the vast space. There was a will that nullified all the techniques in the world, as well as a will that permeated with extreme sorrow. The melody reached the Devil Imperial Palace, and even the cultivators there felt an inexplicable sadness well up inside of them. The divine requiem was a divine melody that affected the emotions of the listeners. It could cause the listeners to dwell uncontrollably in extreme grief. It was not a melody that attacked its opponents up front. Its attack was elusive. The opponents could not even defend against it directly. They could only rely on their strong will to not be affected by the melody. Right now, the storm of the Wuxia song surged towards Futian, intending to forcefully stop him from playing the divine requiem. There was even a streak of fiery red attacks in the midst of the storm. The musical storm transformed into a phantasm of the divine phoenix and pounced towards Futian. Futian's figure disappeared from his spot and reappeared in another location. However, the melody continued uninterrupted. Was she affected by the music? Futian noticed Donghuang Diyuan squirming a little. This was something that had never happened before. He shifted his will, and immediately, many illusory figures of himself appeared all around. The illusory figures played the same song in different locations simultaneously. The melody filled every corner of the heavens and the earth. The will of the divine requiem intensified. Donghuang Diyuan's attacks suddenly turned frantic. The attacks of the melody burst forth and slashed towards different directions. Concurrently, the storm directly crushed all the musical notes that came near to her. Buzz! A figure appeared near Donghuang Diyuan. It was the actual Futian. He no longer needed to play the song as his phantasms continued playing the tune for him. He took a step forward. His figure was shrouded by a terrifying sword, will that flowed against the current of the great path. His body shone brilliantly as he activated his sword body. With a step forward, Futian entered into Donghuang Diyuan's musical storm. An extremely horrifying sword will burst forth from his divine body, forming a reverse current of swordsmanship all around him. Then the current plowed towards Donghuang Diyuan. She naturally did not dare to belittle his attack. A dazzling phantasm of the divine phoenix appeared above her and encircled her. She continued to play her song without stopping. Her menacing musical storm swept towards Futian to shackle and destroy his great path. The two powers clashed together violently. Terrifying rumbling sounds could be heard. Destructive storms covered Futian's figure, yet his divine body remained. Terrifying currents of swordsmanship circled and formed a domain around him as he continued to advance towards Donghuang Diyuan. The musical storm obliterated his defenses and invaded his body, attempting to destroy his divine body and his body of flesh. However, Futian's flesh was extraordinary. Divine light flowed over the surface of his body, rendering him indestructible. His divine body was attacking, but the rhythmic sorcery did not end. The various cultivators looked up into the sky. Futian's phantasm was playing the divine requiem, while his divine body was attacking and attempting to subdue Donghuang Diyuan. Would this work? Right now, Futian was withstanding extremely menacing pressure in the musical storm. Every step he took was very difficult. However, his figure was similarly cloaked in monstrous, murderous swordsmanship. Against him, Donghuang Diyuan did not dare to relax at all. At the same time, the will of the divine requiem invaded. Donghuang Diyuan's hands played faster and faster. One could sense her haste from the Wuxia song. Bang! Futian took a step forward, allowing the astonishing musical storm to sweep over his body. Sonorous sounds of the guqin swept out. The storm was intense. Futian stared at Donghuang Diyuan's figure as he stopped in his tracks. On his body, vast sword will flowed. Right now he was already close to her. If it wasn't for her musical storm getting in his way, he could kill her in an instant. A powerful attack coalesced, and sword will flowed over him. Futian's divine body became a sword and traversed the space, causing the power of the great path to surge backward. Even the musical storm could not destroy him. In front of him, the gigantic phantasm of the divine phoenix behind Donghuang Diyuan took form. It was as though the ancient phoenix had resurrected. Its gaze was frightening, and its body was cloaked in astonishing destructive power. The fiery red divine flames were accompanied by the sounds of the guqin as they swept towards Yi Futian. A light shroud of sword will appeared around Yi Futian, blocking off all attacks. His body did not continue to move. Instead, he kept staring ahead. He was still posing a threat to her, and he could unleash an astonishing attack at any given moment. However, the cost was that he also had to withstand this terrifying attack from her. Yi Futian's gaze was fixed on Donghuang Diyuan. She continued playing with her head lowered, so he could not see her eyes. However, he could sense her music. A musician's current emotion was reflected in their music. With Yi Futian's extraordinary attainment in music, he could tell her current status based on her song. He knew that she was perturbed by the divine requiem. Time and space seemed to halt in the sky. Only the musical storms continued rampaging the space. Both divine melodies were proficient in different territories, but Yi Futian could utilize his phantasms to intensify the tune. Judging from this point, he seemed to be better than Donghuang Diyuan in this aspect. Donghuang Diyuan had been playing with her head lowered. An intense sorrow glistened in her eyes. As she continued playing, there was actually a tint of sadness mixed in the tune of the Yukio song. Right at this moment, a shocking aura pierced through the music and swept towards her. She sensed the aura. Suddenly, she raised her head and looked at Yi Futian. Her gaze turned resolute. Then, she continued playing the divine melody with her head lowered. Yi Futian moved forward in a flash, and he pointed a finger at her. It turned into a divine sword that penetrated through the musical storm and charged towards Donghuang Diyuan. Her divine phoenix let out a long cry and pounced towards Yi Futian, accompanied by terrifying musical notes. It collided with Yi Futian's divine body, resulting in a destructive storm breaking loose. Yi Futian was pushed back by the power of the storm. He then stood in midair. After that, the divine requiem also gradually stopped. All his phantasms returned to his body. When Donghuang Diyuan saw this scene, she also stopped playing, and her guqin vanished. She stood up and looked at Yi Futian. "You have lost," Yi Futian announced as he stared at her. "Is it so?" Donghuang Diyuan cast a glance at him. "Your weak point has been exposed," Yi Futian said. "Even though it only lasted for a split second, you still showed it." Donghuang Diyuan frowned. She did not deny it. "You're the noble princess of the divine prefecture. You are born with everything others desire. You enjoy high status and are adored by all." Yi Futian mocked as he looked at her. "Everything about you is so perfect. There's not even a speck of shortcoming. However, why would you, the only daughter of Donghuang the Great and the noblest woman in the world, feel sad when listening to the divine requiem?" Yi Futian's gaze was piercing as he stared at Donghuang Diyuan intently. He did not expect that the weakness of Donghuang Diyuan would be revealed by the divine requiem. Yi Futian naturally understood what this meant. "You're so full of yourself," Donghuang Diyuan chided coldly. Her tone was emotionless. She did not admit it. Yi Futian expounded. "The divine requiem will awaken the sadness hidden in the listeners' hearts. Someone who has never been through grief will not be affected much by the song. On a similar note, the greater the sorrow one has experienced, the more obvious their weakness will be when listening to the divine requiem. The despair hidden deep within their souls will be awakened and magnified. Given your cultivation and your will, you are surely a very strong cultivator. But you are still affected by the divine requiem. This can only mean one thing." Yi Futian stared at Donghuang Diyuan and continued. "The high and mighty princess of the divine prefecture is not as tough as you make yourself to be. You also have an intense sorrow deep inside your heart. What have you experienced?" As he had said, the will of Donghuang Diyuan was certainly very strong. However, she was perturbed by the divine requiem and showed her weakness. It was surely because she had experienced something very sad. Given her identity, why would she have such a tragic experience? She was born high and mighty. Her starting point in life was already a goal countless people would never achieve in their lives. She was adored by many. What else could make her so grievous? Nonsense. Donghuang Diyuan's gaze was cold as she said, "My experiences are not something that you can understand." "Is that so?" Yi Futian smiled mockingly. "From the looks of it, Nobody was special in the world. Even Donghuang Diyuan, who stood at the peak, was no different from commoners. Her arrogance might be a facade that she put on. Smiling, Yi Futian said, "Sadness is a collective experience among all humans. Everyone needs to let their emotions out. Since Princess said I know nothing about your experiences, why don't you tell me about them? Perhaps I can relieve you from your grief." "Presumptuous," said Donghuang Diyuan as a terrifying aura emanated from her and surged towards Yi Futian. Her gaze was extremely cold. Yi Futian actually dared to speak such frivolous words. "Presumptuous?" Yi Futian smiled as he said, "Your words are much presumptuous than mine. We are in the Devil Imperial Palace now, not Donghuang Imperial Palace. You should tone down your arrogance." Yi Futian teased, "My cultivation is indeed not worth mentioning. However, as the princess of the Divine Prefecture who has access to the best training resources, your cultivation is no different from mine. It is lackluster." Judging from their performances in the battle, none of them had a significant advantage. They couldn't directly suppress each other in any aspect. They were both top existences who were proficient in all aspects. Both their combat abilities were astonishing. However, just a moment ago, Donghuang Diyuan revealed a weak point. Her emotions were perturbed by the divine requiem, and she showed her sorrow. Buzz! A scorching gale was stirred up. Donghuang Diyuan seemed to be enraged by Yi Futian. Divine light flowed around Yi Futian. He looked straight into Donghuang Diyuan's eyes and declared, "If we were in an actual battle, I would remain undefeated due to celerity. I would not be able to do much to you. But the person who would lose in the end would certainly be you." Donghuang Diyuan could predict his attacks, even when he was using celerity. However, what could she do to him if he didn't attack? If they could only restrict each other, who would win in the long run? "You would die if we were in an actual battle," Donghuang Diyuan retorted. Fascinating. Right at this moment, a voice was transmitted to them from afar. The speaker was none other than the Devil Emperor. He was in the Demon God Palace. His voice rang beside them. "The two of you go way back. In the past, Donghuang the Great and Emperor Yi Qing were comrades, and were the two emperors of the Divine Prefecture. Now your encounter with each other might be destiny. Stop trying to decide on a winner here. If you want to defeat each other, go and do so in a secluded place. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters." Chapter 2621, Still Lacking? Chapter 2621, Still Lacking? When the members of the Devil Imperial Palace heard the Devil Emperor's words, they were shocked. Their god, who they held in high regard, was actually making a joke? However, existences such as Donghuang Diyuan and Yi Futian were indeed strong enough to catch the Devil Emperor's eye. They were the most outstanding figures of the next generation. Yi Futian did not find this strange. Before this, the Devil Emperor had already revealed such sinister ideas. Yi Futian did not know what the Devil Emperor's thought process was like. He wanted Yi Futian and Donghuang Diyuan to get a room. If that happened, what would Donghuang the Great's stance be? Yi Futian did not dare to do so. Now, regardless of what reason Donghuang the Great had, he had promised publicly not to touch Yi Futian. However, if Yi Futian slept with Donghuang Diyuan, it was hard to say whether Donghuang the Great would slaughter him in a fit of rage. "What His Highness says is true. Princess, what do you say?" said Yi Futian. His lips uttered words contrary to what he was thinking. He looked at Donghuang Diyuan and smiled as he said this. This woman was cold, arrogant, and noble. She spoke without tact and was extremely rude. He did not mind teasing her a little. Donghuang Diyuan saw that Yi Futian actually dared to respond to the words of the Devil Emperor. She swept an extremely cold glance at Yi Futian, even spewing out murderous aura. She stared at Yi Futian and said, "Although my father promised not to kill you, don't think for a second that you need not worry. In the future, you'd best not get caught by me." As she said this, she immediately turned around and flew down. She had no intention of continuing to fight. After their battle, both sides understood that it was very difficult for either side to completely defeat the other. They were equal in almost every aspect. Of course, they had not truly gone all out and used their strongest skills. If this was a real battlefield, no one knew what the outcome would be. "Princess, why don't you share your sorrows with me? I might be able to comfort you," said Yi Futian casually, ignoring Dong Huang Diyuan's threats. Since her words were sharp, he wanted to see whose words would be more damaging to the other. The light of the golden divine flame flowed over Dong Huang Diyuan's body. She did not turn around and continued heading down, returning to the palace. Yi Futian's expression was indifferent. He similarly headed towards the palace. Weren't they staying under the same roof? This was still the Devil Imperial Palace. The Devil Emperor arranged Dong Huang Diyuan to be grouped with Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. Dong Huang Diyuan naturally would not wander about on her own. Although she knew the Devil Emperor would not touch her, she was also aware of her current status. She was a captive of the Devil Imperial Palace, not a guest. After she returned to the palace, Dong Huang Diyuan walked over to a secluded corner. She then sat down cross-legged, closed her eyes, and began to cultivate. After Yi Futian landed, he came to Yu Sheng's side. He then glanced at Dong Huang Diyuan. Yi Futian had gained a lot of insights from this battle. He learned Dong Huang Diyuan's true combat ability. At the same time, he had a better understanding of his own ability. In terms of combat ability, he was most likely at 2 Tribulation Plane. This would put him among the very top figures. However, he was not invincible. There were many other strong cultivators in this plane. An example would be the person who captured Dong Huang Diyuan. Fang Ru, whom Yi Futian met in the past, was also a super cultivator who was akin to a demigod. All the great emperor-level forces surely did not lack cultivators who were at the same level as him. The leaders of the top forces like Celestial Worthy Mountain Master were not a match for Yi Futian. However, the abilities of those giant-level figures from the ancient god clans still remained a mystery to him. For them to be able to command the ancient god clans, their abilities would surely not be any weaker than that of Yi Futian. He wondered whether their abilities were on par with Fang Ru's. He would need to test them out before he could tell for sure. "Yu Sheng." Yi Futian looked at Yu Sheng and said, "We have successfully endured all the catastrophes. His Highness will most likely stop targeting us now. It's time for us to train." After they experienced 49 catastrophes on the demon-slaying platform, their flesh and spiritual souls were refined, and they had grown more powerful. They should train harder now to fortify their cultivation. Yu Sheng nodded in agreement. They were lucky to be able to survive the catastrophes. After this experience, he had a deeper understanding of demonic power. Yi Futian patted Yu Sheng on the shoulder. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he held his tongue. The things that the Devil Emperor had shown them, and the conversation he had with them still had a great impact on Yi Futian. Cultivators in the world sought to reach the pinnacle of martial arts. They trained frenziedly and attempted to prove their way at the highest level, not knowing that even if they managed to reach that step with exceptional talent, they would still have to undergo another tribulation. The last tribulation would be to get the recognition of all the great emperors alive today. There were currently 6 great emperors in the world. Their relationships with each other were complex and formed a delicate balance. The birth of a new emperor might disrupt the world's balance. Only by preserving this delicate equilibrium of power could one remain on their throne securely. Yi Futian had a vendetta with Dong Huang the Great. Being born in the original realm, the Devil Emperor claimed that Yi Futian might become an emperor. However, it was merely a possibility. After all, Yi Futian's identity was still a very sensitive issue. Yu Sheng was similarly a dangerous individual, due to him being one with the Devil Emperor. It was certainly the same for Dong Huang Diyuan. There was the prior example of Emperor Yi Qing. Although all the cultivators of the various major imperial palaces sought the path of the emperor, if they truly managed to reach the imperial realm, they would most likely be in danger. Even so, the path of the great emperor was still the life goal of all cultivators. Countless cultivators attempted to seek this path. On the contrary, cultivators who were not with the major imperial palaces, such as those from the ancient god clans or other top forces, were safe even if they became great emperors. They would not offset the balance. Hence, their existences as great emperors were fine. After all, if a great emperor really emerged from the ancient god clans, they would surely not be of one mind with Donghuang the Great. Instead, they would form their own world, and no longer obey Donghuang the Great's command. The other great emperors would most likely go against Yusheng if he became a great emperor. Only one could exist between Yusheng and the Devil Emperor. Judging from what the Devil Emperor said before, he would most likely hand over the throne to Yusheng. However, in return, Yusheng needed to be responsible for the welfare of the entire Devil world and withstand the catastrophes of the Devil Abyss. Obviously, Yi Futian did not wish to see Yusheng shoulder the catastrophes of the Devil Abyss and suffer from endless pain. Nevertheless, it was too early to consider all these now. In the next few days, Yi Futian and Yusheng cultivated quietly in the Devil Imperial Palace. Donghuang Diyuan also cultivated under the same roof as them, but she spoke very little. She was immersed in her meditation. She seemed to be well aware of her identity as a hostage. On this day, divine light suddenly lit up the sky above the Devil Imperial Palace. Dazzling light illuminated the entire palace. In the heavens above, divine light shone down, causing the cultivators in the palace to all look up in awe. Who had come to pay a visit? The Devil Emperor appeared above the Demon God Palace. With his hands behind his back, he raised his head and looked at the sky. His black robes fluttered in the wind, and he appeared domineering. His figure emanated the aura of a ruler of the heavens and the earth. A silhouette showed up in front of the Devil Emperor. Sensing his arrival, both Yi Futian and Yusheng shifted their attention towards the sky. Their hearts trembled. Donghuang Diyuan also paused her cultivation. She stood up and looked in the direction of the visitor. Donghuang the Great is here, Yi Futian exclaimed. This was his second time encountering the king of the Divine Prefecture. It's been many years since we last met. Devil Emperor, how are you doing? Greeted Donghuang the Great as he stood in the sky and looked at the figure on top of the Demon God Palace. His voice was calm, as though he was greeting an old friend. Donghuang, what brings you to my Devil Imperial Palace? The Devil Emperor asked deliberately. My daughter has stayed here for quite a while. Thank you for taking care of her. But I think it's time for me to bring her back, so that she doesn't disturb your cultivation. Donghuang the Great responded. He was obviously here to bring his daughter back. She is a prisoner of war. I did not mistreat her out of my respect for you. But do you think you can leave this place with her by just uttering a few words? The Devil Emperor questioned. I owe you a favor. In the future, when the opportunity arises, I'll return the favor, Donghuang the Great said. At their level, they would not act recklessly even though they were opponents. If they killed the other party's descendant, they would have gone too far, and it would have triggered a massacre. Hence, both the great emperors were very cautious not to act hastily. How will you return the favor? The Devil Emperor said. Devil Emperor, feel free to state your request if you have one, Donghuang the Great said. I have not decided on one now. I will inform you when I have made up my mind, the Devil Emperor replied. All right. Donghuang the Great nodded. You may bring your daughter back, the Devil Emperor said right away. He accepted Donghuang the Great's promise readily, not worrying that the latter would go against his own word. Even though they were enemies, they were very familiar with each other. They also trusted each other. Many thanks. Donghuang the Great nodded. Then, he looked towards Donghuang Diyuan. She rose to the sky and came to where Donghuang the Great was. Father, Donghuang Diyuan greeted. Let's go home, Donghuang the Great said. Donghuang Diyuan nodded in agreement. Before she left, she turned around and cast a glance at the palace. At this moment, Yi Futian, who was in the Devil Imperial Palace, could clearly sense that she was looking at him. From the looks of it, this woman was the type that would keep score in a relationship. Donghuang the Great and Donghuang Diyuan disappeared in the blink of an eye and left the Devil Imperial Palace. After they left, the Devil Emperor appeared in the palace where Yusheng and Yi Futian were. He cast an indifferent glance at them and said, Even after spending so much time together, you did not manage to win the maiden's heart. It seems like you guys are still lacking. Stupefied, Yi Futian stared at the Devil Emperor. He felt that he had been insulted. The Devil Emperor said to Yi Futian, "Since she has left, you should leave too. The troops of the Devil World will not touch the original realm. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 26-22. Dong Huang the Great's Initial Resolution. Chapter 26-22. Dong Huang the Great's initial resolution. Upon hearing the Devil Emperor's promise, Yi Futian bowed and said, "Many thanks, Your Highness. The Ziwei segmentum is not the only force in the original realm currently. Forces from the various worlds are there too. However, the Ziwei segmentum is the largest force that is in charge of the realm. I can't say the same for the other forces, but the forces of the Ziwei segmentum will surely not become enemies with the Devil World. The two parties would not interfere in each other's business. As for allying with the Devil World to invade the Divine Prefecture together, Yi Futian dared not bring up this suggestion since the Ziwei segmentum had yet to build up the necessary strength. The Devil Emperor commanded the entire Devil World. The cultivators of the Devil World were far fewer in number than the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture. However, everyone in the Devil World was willing to join the war upon receiving the command of the Devil Emperor. In terms of unity, the Divine Prefecture was no match for the Devil World. Moreover, many top-level demonic cultivators had emerged over the years. Before this, the Ziwei segmentum was sealed away, and the cultivators who resided inside the segmentum were complacent with their achievements. They were also restricted in terms of their cultivation. The Ziwei segmentum was the last region protected by the Great Emperor Ziwei, and the cultivators had been improving since Yi Futian became their palace lord. However, they were still far behind the other major worlds. The local forces of the original realm were even weaker. What would happen if Yi Futian commanded them to fight a war against the troops of the Divine Prefecture? It would be no different from sending them to die. If a world war were to erupt among the various major worlds, the forces of the Ziwei segmentum would seize the opportunity to cultivate and improve their abilities. This would be the best outcome. The Devil Emperor did not say anything else. Yi Futian was uncertain of the former's attitude towards this matter. "Your Highness, I still have one thing which I wish to ask you," Yi Futian probed. "What is it?" the Devil Emperor asked. "My godfather. Do not mention him in front of me." A terrifying pressure descended on Yi Futian instantaneously and stopped him from speaking. Yi Futian was curious to find out what happened in the past. The Devil Emperor was a heroic figure who had exceptional cultivation and charisma. This was proven based on the attitude of the cultivators of the Devil Imperial Palace and the Devil World towards him. He single-handedly sustained the lives of everyone here. Under such circumstances, why would Yi Futian's godfather betray the Devil World and choose to join the Divine Prefecture? What else happened after that? The sites of relics discovered and occupied by the 6 ancient Shun clans, such as the Haotian clan, were now affiliated cultivation sites for Ziwei segmentum. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 26-24, Personal Matters? Chapter 26-24, Personal Matters? Naturally, Yi Futian was pleased to see everyone in Ziwei Imperial Palace working so diligently to improve themselves. When the third senior brother was in the Heavenly Mandate realm, he had gotten the inheritance of the demon gods. Later, in the Starry Cultivating Court, he received the inheritance of an imperial star. Now, with the comprehension of the divine seal from a great emperor, he would have possessed the inheritance from 3 great emperors. His strength had not been truly tested after the breakthrough, but it would be understandably strong. They could only wait and see. "I have something else to tell you," Hua Jiyu said with a smile. "What other happy news?" Yi Futian asked with a smile on his face. Uncle Tai thought that while he's serving as one of the Great Protector, he can open up the 5th palace in Ziwei Emperor Palace, an armoring palace, and oversee its operations. It is being built right now in the Imperial Palace as we speak. This happened while you were away at the Devil World, and the Supreme Elder made the decision that was seconded by everyone. But in the end, we decided to wait for you when you come back, said Huajiyu. This is a good idea. How could I say no? You can make the decision on my behalf. Yi Futian smiled and added, don't forget, you are the mistress of the palace. In your absence, it is more appropriate for the Supreme Elder to decide on the affairs inside Ziwei Imperial Palace. Huajiyu replied with much sensibility. Yi Futian took her hand with a warm smile on his face and said, let's go visit Uncle Tai. The first time I saw Uncle Tai, I thought he was an ordinary blacksmith. It turned out that he was a hidden gem. The first time he saw Blind Tai was in the Four-Square Village, forging in the blacksmith shop there. Now, inside Ziwei Imperial Palace, an area was being allocated to build an armoring palace, which had already reached a certain scale. Yi Futian came to the main hall of a massive armoring palace and found Blind Tai, who was forging inside. At the moment, he was pounding on some materials, and a rhythmic clinking sound could be heard constantly. His movements were the same as before, solid as a mountain. Every move of repeated percussion was full of violent beauty. At this time, Blind Tai stopped and turned to face Yi Futian. The temperature inside was extremely high, and the blazing sacred fire of the great path was burning under the furnace. Palace Lord, Blind Tai called out. Uncle Tai, I have not asked you this before, but how is your armor making? Yi Futian asked with a smile. It's all right, Blind Tai nodded. When I got back to the village after I lost my eyesight, the teacher told me to forge simple items, and everything that was used inside the village was made by at that time. I was already cultivating and armoring. When I returned from the Sheng clan, I passed by the village and asked the teacher for some advice. The teacher gave me some armoring techniques to practice, and I was a quick study. Not too long ago, I had managed to forge divine arms of the first tribulation. As for the armoring equipment, there was plenty in the former territory occupied by Tianyan City. They belong to us now. The armoring palace has just begun, and I haven't recruited many people. Later on, I plan to conduct recruitment on a grander scale at the Ziwei Segmentum that will complete the armoring palace. Blind Tai told Yi Futian of his plan. I will fully support Uncle Tai's idea, Yi Futian said. But will this delay your cultivation? When the teacher told me to forge iron tools, it was actually a way to help me settle down. To me, this is a kind of cultivation in itself, and I will only progress further if I continue, Blind Tai replied. Very well. Yi Futian nodded. If this is the case, Uncle Tai does not need to serve as the great protector in the future, but will instead take on the duties as the Lord of the Armoring Palace. What do you think? Palace Lord, may I do both? Blind Tai asked. He still wanted to serve as Yi Futian's protector, but concentrated on armoring and forging most of the time. However, whenever Yi Futian needed him, he wanted to be there as his protector. Obviously, Yi Futian understood that Blind Tai was not coveting the position and its prestige. He glanced at Blind Tai and nodded. Fine. We will do as you wish. Lord of the Armoring Palace while serving as the great protector as well. I will give them the order to recruit armoring cultivators at Ziwei Imperial Palace. Thank you, Palace Lord. Blind Tai nodded. Uncle Tai, please continue. I'm going elsewhere. Yi Futian said goodbye and left. After they left, Yi Futian said to Huajiyu, when Uncle Tai and Taoist monk Mu both get stronger, and their level of armoring and alchemy have improved, the strength of Ziwei Imperial Palace will also be magnified, far surpassing anything from the ancient god clans. Huajiyu smiled and nodded. With you in Ziwei Imperial Palace, the ancient god clans already cannot compete with us. Ziwei Imperial Palace potential targets are also not the ancient god clans. Just as Yi Futian was looking at Huajiyu, who was beside him, Huajiyu too was looking at him. She said with a smile, now that Ziwei Imperial Palace is moving on the right track, when will you finish handling your business? My business? Yi Futian looked at Huajiyu with some confusion. What business do I have? You have been busy with cultivation, fighting, and external affairs, and you have not paid too much attention to those around you. Emperor Xia has been kind to us in the past, and although he is now in the Ziwei Imperial Palace, he is not happy. I think you know the reason, Huajiyu continued. Yi Futian was taken aback, and his expression was not as relaxed as it was moments ago. He said gently, Jiyu. He did not expect Huajiyu to start on this topic. After all, she was the one who had accompanied you all these years. Huajiyu looked into Yi Futian's eyes as she continued. But what about you? Yi Futian looked at Huajiyu. Huajiyu had also given her everything for him. If I don't care, I don't think she would either, Huajiyu said with a smile. How would you know? Yi Futian gave her a side-eyed look. You idiot. If she cared, she would not have stayed in Ziwei Imperial Palace to cultivate endlessly. Huajiyu sighed. She was just waiting for you. Yi Futian could only stare in front of him, as he had no answer to give. For someone on the verge of becoming an emperor, no one would care, Huajiyu continued. But could you really not care? Yi Futian looked into Huajiyu's eyes, and saw those beautiful eyes staring right back at him without any evasiveness. Yi Futian sighed silently in his heart, as his thoughts drifted back to that innocent maiden once upon a time. Could she really not care? He didn't think anyone could. On the road to becoming a great emperor, you may fail many, but some should not be overlooked, Huajiyu said with a smile. Then I'll talk about it after I have become an emperor. Yi Futian knocked on her head playfully, and did not continue the topic. However, his heart was disturbed slightly by this talk. How could he not understand how much she had already done for him? One afterward, Yi Futian went to the former territory of Haotian clan, to check on Gudong's cultivation. The imprint of the divine seal was left there by a great emperor, so he stayed there for a while to comprehend it as well. He found this divine seal to be extremely profound, as it contained the will of the great emperor. As for Gudonglu, he had already sunk deep into the cultivation of the divine seal, and entered into a world completely of his own. Yi Futian likewise spent some time here to comprehend as well. Then, he left to return to Ziwei Imperial Palace. Under the endless starry sky, Yi Futian sat cross-legged in the starry cultivation court, and closed his eyes in cultivation. He had begun yet another cultivation in retreat. In the battle between the Devil World and the Donghuang Diyuan, he realized that his combat effectiveness was still not strong enough. He needed an even more powerful offensive power. In the future, the opponents he was to face would be stronger existences than Donghuang Diyuan. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 26-25, Terrorizing. Chapter 26-25, Terrorizing in Ziwei Imperial Palace. Everyone was working on their projects. Some were cultivating, some were making armor, and some were focusing on alchemy. Time passed by without anyone being consciously aware of it. Upon the land of the Divine Prefecture, more and more people were now getting involved in the war. One by one, the empty divine realm, the dark world, the human realm, and the world of Buddhism began to make their way in the arena of war, and caught up in the storm of war. Today's North Cliff region was a war zone. Those who could migrated and left. In contrast, some who were less able could only survive in all the war and chaos. After all, there were countless cultivators in each of the 18 regions in the Divine Prefecture, and not everyone could leave. Not to mention escape meant traveling across many continents and many regions. The outside world was at war, and only the original realm continued to develop. Yi Futian was quietly cultivating in the starry cultivation court. He appeared quite calm on the outside, but the world of his life palace inside, there was something extremely interesting going on. Now the world of Yi Futian's life palace was like a projection of the real world. He stood above the void as countless golden lightning burst out from his body. It was radiant to the extreme, with a tremendously sharp aura blooming from him. His body was like the sword itself. In that gigantic domain of the golden lightning, divine swords appeared. Each divine sword was shining with countless sword seals, so that those divine swords contained an incomparable aura of sharpness. Boom! In the chaotic space, That golden lightning seemed to contain powerful spatial destructive power. This imagery was somewhat similar to the scene when Donghuang Diyuan released the Tianqing divine sword. It was right after he fought Donghuang Diyuan that he had some inward comprehension. He wanted to realize more powerful swordsmanship to counter Tianqing divine sword. All the swordsmanship that he had comprehended previously were dust, fleeting, with Boundless Sword being the epitome of his comprehension of the two previous swordsmanships in totality. After he inherited the power of Ziwei the Great, he cultivated the Starry Divine Sword. These two swordsmanships followed different paths. Boundless was unhindered by time and space, with a force that could slash through everything, accomplished in a turning of the mind. The Starry Divine Sword, on the other hand, was dominant and forceful, for it was the sword of kings and emperors. It dominated all, slaughtered all. Its power was infinite. These days, Yi Futian had been comprehending these two kinds of swordsmanship to integrate the two into one coherent swordsmanship, just like the imagery in front of him. In the destructive domain of the golden lightning, every divine sword contained an unparalleled aura of slaughter, which was bred in the space of destruction. However, at this moment, Yi Futian reached out with his hand, and immediately an infinite power gathered in front of him, as the most brilliant imperial glory was shining. There, a gigantic golden divine sword appeared. This divine sword guided all the other divine swords in this area, as if they were all under its command. It was the King of Swords, and in this sword, there was the imperial glory. Buzz! Along with the turning of Yi Futian's thought, the gigantic golden divine sword turned ever so slightly, as the brilliant divine glory of swordsmanship came down for the kill. Instantly inside the domain, countless divine swords fell and broke through the atmosphere effortlessly. At the same time, Yi Futian pressed his hand forward, and immediately, that gigantic golden divine sword penetrated the space and disappeared. However, it left a golden trace wherever it had passed through in the space. Boom! In the distance, the divine sword appeared instantly, extinguishing the way and the method, unhindered by time or space. All the stars in the sky had collapsed and pulverized. When he saw that brilliant sword light, Yi Futian displayed a look of satisfaction. After so long, he had finally perfected this sword. It was a sword that integrated with the starry swordsmanship of Ziwei the Great, a sword that was further evolved from the foundation of Boundless Sword. Once this sword was unleashed, it should be able to suppress Donghuang Diyuan's Tianqing divine sword. The sword wielded by Donghuang Diyuan was named Tianqing, whose meaning was the sword that executed punishment from heaven. Then what should be the name of his sword? For the moment, Yi Futian had put it aside to continue his cultivation and other abilities. He was now well versed in Buddha's celerity, and could come and go as he pleased without a trace. He could attack at close range in a matter of milliseconds, and his physical body was invincible. Just physical attacks alone were enough to instill fear in his opponents. He wanted to perfect his ability in close-quarter combat, thus making himself even more powerful. Yi Futian was an expert at many offensive techniques. In the world of Buddhism, he had cultivated many powerful superpowers, which could all be integrated and transformed into his own kind of power. Yi Futian closed his eyes and entered into a state of selflessness. He was completely immersed in a cultivational state. Cultivation of the superpowers was also the attainment of a state of perfection. He recalled the seal that he was comprehending before with the third senior brother Gu Donglu. Under the attack of the great emperor's divine seal, a domain of the divine seal seemed to appear, and the attack by the seal gave rise to the illusion that one was being trapped within its domain of attacks. This was an incredibly powerful move. This type of attack by the divine seal was similar to the symbol of one that he cultivated in Buddhism. However, the symbol of one was a seal that was even more overpowering, aggressive, and much stronger. The attack of the divine seal had integrated within it the abilities of other methods, but as a result, not as pure as the symbol of Wan. Any attempts to comprehend offensive techniques, based on the basis of these powerful seals, was going to be difficult, very difficult. After all, this was already the top-notch fighting method, or else it would be impossible for him to clash head-on with Donghuang Diyuan. The fighting method, as cultivated by Donghuang Diyuan likewise, was also the topmost of all divine methods. Yi Futian immersed in his cultivation and comprehension. In a blink of an eye, a year passed. During this year, everyone was making progress. The armoring hall in Ziwei Imperial Palace was finished, and a group of master armorers had been summoned from Ziwei Segmentum to the armoring palace. Today, the Ziwei Segmentum was considered a principality with the status of overlord in the land of the original realm. It had occupied the secret zones of many places in addition to its own cultivational resources from Ziwei Imperial Palace. Given time, they would no doubt grow stronger still. Yi Futian stopped cultivating and found the Supreme Elder, Lord Chun, instead. "Is the Palace Lord looking for me for something?" Lord Chun asked Yi Futian. "Lord Chun, I have made some progress in my cultivation recently, and comprehended some new ways of combat. But there is no one who could spar with me to try it out. I have no idea how powerful it may or may not be. May I ask your help to spar with me?" Yi Futian asked. "Sure. Any study with the Palace Lord will definitely help me in my own cultivation." Lord Chin would not refuse him, of course, and agreed readily. "Okay, let's head up then." Yi Futian and Lord Chun moved towards the sky high above, and came to the starry cultivation court. Under the blanket of the starry sky, the two stood opposite each other, and both of them released a powerful aura. They were surrounded by divine light, and it dazzled and gleamed. What are the Palace Lord and the Supreme Elder intend to do? Many people raised their heads to look at the sky above. Is the Palace Lord going to have an exchange with the Supreme Elder? Some people guessed and grew excited. Immediately, everyone stopped what they were doing and looked into the firmament. "Watch out," Yi Futian said to Lord Chen. I know. Lord Chen knew just how powerful Yi Futian was, and that he couldn't possibly be a contender. After all, Yi Futian had slain existences that were at the same level as he. Nonetheless, he had some confidence in his own power, and that it was possible for him to spar with him a little. Buzz! Yi Futian disappeared directly from the spot. He appeared in front of Lord Chen the next moment, raising his hand and slamming it down. When the strike fell, Yi Futian seemed to have turned into a golden Buddha, whose palm strikes were unbelievably overwhelming. What was even more terrifying was that when the Buddha's palm strike blasted out, it was accompanied by the sound of Buddha. Bang! With a loud boom, Lord Chun raised his hand to block it, but that powerful force sent him flying. Before he had time to grasp the situation fully, Yi Futian appeared in front of him again, still blasting him with those Buddhist palm strikes. As soon as those strikes came through, his entire person seemed to be caught up in the attack, and he felt trapped within its domain. As the sound of Buddha lingered, the horrific power of Yin emerged again at this moment that could freeze and solidify his spiritual soul. Boom! There was another loud boom, and Lord Chen felt very unwell all of a sudden. The aura of the Great Path exploded fiercely from his body as the divine light gleamed. He turned into the starry body, and his long robe fluttered in the wind. In the space below, everyone saw an endless trail of Yi Futian's palm strikes, blasting down again and again. Lord Chen was forced to change his positions continuously under that series of attacks. Their hearts trembled slightly. It was so sad for Lord Chen, who was beaten to the degree that he had not the strength to fight back. The Palace Lord deserved his reputation. He was simply too powerful. Stop! A voice was heard from above the firmament. Yi Futian was about to retract the giant palm print that had fallen, and looked at Lord Chen, when he saw Lord Chen glared at him and said, "I'm not sparring anymore." "Don't say that," Yi Futian said. "How about you gather your strength first, and I will wait to attack when you are ready." "Fine." Lord Chen nodded, and suddenly the stars in heaven released an endless starry divine light as he bathed in it. His long robe fluttered, unleashing a terrifying and awesome divine glory of the Great Path. At this moment, Yi Futian's lips moved slightly, and the sound of Buddha immediately surrounded him. Figures of Buddha appeared between heaven and earth in the vast space, and a massive Buddha appeared. Its presence covered the sky and sheltered the sun, completely shrouding this world. All the Buddhas resonated with one another, and extended their hands at the same time. In each hand, there was a giant Buddhist handprint that was the same as the one Yi Futian used in his previous attack. In addition, the The sound of Buddha that lingered between heaven and earth could also suppress all existence. Lord Chun felt this power, and was about to speak. Stop! Lord Chun stretched out his hands and retracted his aura, signaling Yi Futian to stop. Yi Futian was stunned as he looked at Lord Chun. Stop, Lord Chun said. I'm not sparring anymore. Yi Futian said with some confusion and shock. Don't you want to even try? Nope, I don't. Lord Chun simply shook his head. Doesn't he care about his dignity? Yi Futian wondered. Yi Futian thought that it was kind of a shame. He was not taking it seriously, and he hadn't even exerted half of his power. Now he had no way of testing his true power. All right. Yi Futian reluctantly retracted his aura, and came to Lord Chen's side in a flash, helping him to tidy up his garment for him. Don't trouble yourself, Palace Lord. Lord Chen's mustache trembled slightly. He didn't think Yi Futian was totally innocent in his kindness. He felt that he better not be fooled by this sudden gesture of kindness. Lord Chun, as the Supreme Elder, you deserve it. Yi Futian tidied up his collar and said, I am currently comprehending some methods. In the future, I may have to consult Lord Chun often, and seek your opinion on how powerful they are. Palace Lord, I have something else to tend to, so I will take my leave now. The corner of Lord Chen's mouth twitched a little, and he was gone in a flash. He had slipped away even before Yi Futian had a chance to respond. Don't go! Yi Futian shouted, sounding a little bit at a loss. Down below, many people started laughing out loud. Then, they all went back to work on their own projects. Their Palace Lord was too much. That was equivalent to terrorizing his fellow men. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2626, A Powerful Ally. Chapter 2626. A powerful ally. A beam of divine light of space suddenly lit up in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. A silhouette appeared in the spatial matrix. The person was none other than Yi Futian. Behind him were his 4 disciples. Some of the members gathered around the matrix. When they saw Yi Futian, they immediately bowed and greeted him, Palace Lord. Currently, the Heavenly Mandate Academy was under the jurisdiction of Ziwei Imperial Palace, where Yi Futian was the Palace Lord. Everyone was well aware of this. Yi Futian nodded in response. Chunyi also came close to them. Everyone, please go on with your own business. I'm here to settle some matters, said Yi Futian to the crowd. The members were somewhat reluctant to leave. Right now, Yi Futian was crowned deity Yi in the Heavenly Mandate realm. He was not someone they could meet whenever they wished. Yi Futian was more like a legend in the Heavenly Mandate realm. What matters do you have here? Chunyi asked. He stood in place of Gu Donglu as the person in charge of the realm. Everything seemed fine to him. It's not related to the Heavenly Mandate realm. I am going on a trip. Please join me, Yi Futian replied. All right. Chunyi nodded. Then, he followed Yi Futian out. The other 4 disciples joined them too. Where is Palace Lord going? Someone asked curiously. I don't know, but I suppose that no place in the current Heavenly Mandate realm is worthy of him visiting, someone replied. There was another vast continent beside the Heavenly Mandate realm. The cultivators who resided on this continent kept in touch with people from the original realm. In the past, the force that governed this continent formed an alliance with the Heavenly Mandate realm by chance, and they moved their continent here. Time passed and things had changed, but they had not thought of migrating to another location. This was the Shin'i continent. The Lost Clan resided here. Now, the Lost Clan had freed themselves from the nightmare of wandering in the void space endlessly. They were living at a much more relaxing pace now. Even though there was turmoil in the original realm, the Lost Clan was never affected. It was because they were an ancient power, to begin with. Besides that, they were also compelling. In the past, the Lost Clan once faced the invasion of giant-level forces from various worlds. In terms of combatability, if the ancient god clans did not rely on the will of the great emperors in battle, the Lost Clan would have triumphed over all of them. There were quite a few giant-level figures among the Lost Clan, Yi Futian had once again come to the Shin'i continent to meet the Lost Clan. The cultivators of the Lost Clan all knew Yi Futian. When they saw his arrival, they all looked at him. Soon, a familiar figure appeared in front of Yi Futian and his group. The person was none other than Sikong Nan, the chief elder of the Lost Clan. Senior Sikong greeted Yi Futian while bowing. Deity Yi, you're being too polite. Sikong Nan responded with a smile. What kind of title is that? Yi Futian laughed while shaking his head. Are you not aware of this title? Now everyone in the heavenly mandate realm addresses you like this. Sikong Nan stared at Yi Futian. Obviously, he knew that Yi Futian was the god of the heavenly mandate realm now. Yi Futian smiled and continued. Senior Sikong, you seem to have known that I would come to pay you a visit? Sikong Nan was not at all surprised when he saw Yi Futian. Right now you are the ruler of the original realm. Isn't it expected that you will visit the Lost Clan? Sikong Nan responded. The two parties were allies to begin with. Sikong Nan offered, come. I have asked my men to prepare a feast. Let's continue our conversation over at the banquet table. Sure. Yi Futian nodded in agreement. Sikong Nan led the way, and they arrived at the place where the banquet was. Yi Futian and his group were guided to their seats. A few cultivators from the Lost Clan joined their company too. I never imagined that after so many years, the Shin'i continent has never migrated elsewhere. Yi Futian told Sikong Nan as they sat down. The Lost Clan was situated on a floating landmass. They had absolute control over the Shin'i continent and could choose to migrate far away at any given time. Yet the Lost Clan had not done so. They had stayed beside the heavenly mandate realm all this while. Although the original realm is a land of conflict, it is similarly away from the conflict. It is quite nice here, replied Sikong Nan. After the storm back then, no one dared to target the Lost Clan. The Lost Clan also kept a low profile. Even though their ability was very powerful, they never placed themselves under the spotlight or fought for fateful encounters with other top forces. Therefore, they were able to keep themselves safe. Do you have any thoughts about the future of the clan? Yi Futian asked. Palace Lord Yi, you want us to join Ziwei Imperial Palace, right? Sikong Nan asked with a smile. Not join us, but form an alliance with us just like before, Yi Futian coaxed. The Lost Clan has not encountered any trouble all these years, but you have experienced firsthand the storm in the past. Now war has erupted among the few major worlds. No one knows when the original realm will be caught up in it too. Or perhaps one day, one of the emperor-level forces might remember the Lost Clan and intend to annex you. After all, the current original realm is no longer under the jurisdiction of the Divine Prefecture. Yi Futian's prediction was harsh, but it was the truth. The Divine Prefecture invited us to migrate there too, but we turned them down, Sikong Nan said. In the past, to save the Lost Clan from the besiegement of all the various forces, Donghuang Diuan had personally visited the Lost Clan and announced that the latter was under the jurisdiction of the Divine Prefecture. In the past, the original realm was under the Divine Prefecture. However, things have changed now. If you join the Divine Prefecture, you will most likely lose control over a lot of things, Yi Futian said. Now, the Ziwei segmentum has built up a little heritage, and the original realm is no longer under the control of the Divine Prefecture. Senior, can you please consider allying with us again? Firstly, our alliance will allow us to take care of each other. We will be able to improve together. Secondly, after the Shin'i continent is migrated into the Ziwei segmentum, no forces from the outer realms will be able to pose a threat to you. Palace Lord Yi, are you trying to make the Lost Clan pledge allegiance to you? Sikong Nan questioned. I'm not asking you to pledge allegiance to me. I am proposing a collaboration here. We will be allies, Yi Futian emphasized. Our collaboration went well last time, but it's a pity that we stopped being allies due to what happened after. Now, everything has settled down. The Divine Prefecture and the other forces initiated the World War. However, the original realm is still peaceful, and you will find great development opportunities here. It's a win-win situation for the Lost Clan and the Ziwei segmentum to ally. You're concerned that I will annex the Lost Clan, but I have never thought of such a thing. After so many years, I'm sure that Chief Elder is well aware of my personality. Yi Futian continued. If Chief Elder is worried, you don't have to move the continent into the Z-Way segmentum. We can keep things the same and visit each other through the space teleportation grand matrix. In the future, if trouble arises, only then do you need to move the continent into the segmentum. That will hopefully spare you from some future trouble. Sikongnan nodded and replied, I naturally trust deity Yi, and am willing to ally with the Z-Way segmentum. However, the Lost Clan has pledged our loyalty to Princess Donghuang of the Divine Prefecture. If we allied with you now, wouldn't we be betraying the princess? If the Divine Prefecture wants to settle the score with us, we will be in trouble. Yi Futian responded confidently. You were forced to do so in the past. It was never your intention to pledge your loyalty to her. Back then, the original realm was under the Divine Prefecture. Therefore, it was an acquiescence that all the forces in the original realm would be under the Divine Prefecture. It did not mean that the Lost Clan was under the subjugation of the Imperial Palace. There are many powerful forces in the Divine Prefecture that are not under the command of the Imperial Palace. Now, even the original realm is no longer obeying the command of the Divine Prefecture. Since the Lost Clan is in the original realm, naturally, you are also no longer under the command of the Divine Prefecture. In principle, you are an independent force. It's your freedom to ally with whoever you fancy anyway. To say the least, even if the Imperial Palace is unhappy with our alliance, Donghuang the Great will never attack us personally. Without him being involved, with the collaboration of the Z-Way segmentum and the Lost Clan, nobody is a match for us when we are in the segmentum. Sikongnan had also heard of Yi Futian's glorious battle record. As long as the great emperor stayed out of the war, nobody could invade the Z-Way segmentum. The Shinny continent would indeed be very safe if they formed an alliance with the Z-Way segmentum. It would be safer than them staying alone here. The world has changed greatly. Various emperor-level forces are engaged in war now. The original realm is temporarily safe and is not involved in any dispute. But no one knows what the future holds, Yi Futian pressed on. Aside from being safe, the Z-Way segmentum also has the best environment for cultivation. Moreover, we have seized control of the bases of the 6 major ancient god clans in the original realms. All those bases own secret zones for cultivation too. We are willing to provide all of that to the Lost Clan for cultivation, so that you will be further strengthened. Yi Futian introduced. Here are my disciples, and the protector of Z-Way Imperial Palace. 2 of them have undergone the divine tribulation of the Great Path. The other 3 disciples are currently at the peak of the Runhuang Plain, and they are good in combat too. Many other cultivators are equally powerful as them in Z-Way Imperial Palace. Sikongnan praised. Regardless of you or your men, all of you have improved at an astonishing speed. By now, Senior Sikong should understand my purpose here today. I am inviting the Lost Clan to ally with us. After all, we were allies in the past. It was just that we were forced to break up. I have also cultivated the teachings of the Lost Clan, so I have a deep sense of connection with you, Yi Futian said convincingly. I have said all I wanted to say, so that I will stop here. I will let Senior decide on your own. It's all right even if the Lost Clan rejects my offer. We are still friends. I will take my leave now. As Yi Futian said this, he stood up and bid Sikongnan farewell. Palace Lord Yi, please allow me to first discuss this matter with the others, Sikongnan said. I can't make this decision alone. All right, Yi Futian nodded. Then, he sat down while Sikongnan left the banquet. After a moment, Sikongnan returned to the banquet. A few elders accompanied him. They all looked at Yi Futian as Sikongnan announced. The Shinny continent has decided to migrate into the Z-Way segmentum. Yi Futian was quite thrilled when he heard this announcement. However, on the surface he calmly smiled and appeared nonchalant. He nodded and responded. The Z-Way segmentum is honored to be able to continue being an ally of the Lost Clan. Palace Lord Yi, you spoke too humbly. There are many things we will need to rely on you for in the future, Sikongnan said. All right. I will settle everything on the Z-Way segmentum side, Yi Futian said while nodding. He was extremely excited. He was certainly in ecstasy to be able to dupe such a powerful ancient clan into the Ziwei segmentum. With the lost clan around, even if Yi Futian were not in the Ziwei segmentum in the future, Ziwei Imperial Palace would be safe in most instances. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 26-27. A major figure from the Dark Court. Chapter 26-27. A major figure from the Dark Court. Yi Futian ruled over the Ziwei segmentum. When the Sheni continent migrated into the segmentum, the Lost Clan was practically in his hands. The intention of Yi Futian inviting the Lost Clan to join the segmentum was because he wanted to fortify the power of the Ziwei segmentum. However, he would not mistreat the Lost Clan. The Sheni continent would be placed directly beside the main planet in the Ziwei segmentum. Besides that, Yi Futian would build a teleportation grand matrix that connected the Lost Clan and Ziwei Imperial Palace. Moreover, the cultivators of the Lost Clan could utilize all the resources available in Ziwei Imperial Palace for their cultivation. If he wanted the Lost Clan to take action in the future, he naturally had to gain their trust. Yi Futian also allowed Lord Chun and Sikong Nan to meet and get to know each other. In the future, they could directly liaise with each other on matters of both parties. After arranging all this, Yi Futian continued cultivating. He was used to being a hands-off manager. Just like that, several more years passed. These past few years, countless people had died in the war between the 6 realms. They had been in a prolonged stalemate. All sides did not dare to act too aggressively, all of them holding back. Donghuang Imperial Palace rallied the various cultivators of the Divine Prefecture to join the war. However, many forces had not responded. The more powerful the force, the more likely they did not react and acted perfunctorily. The difference between the situation in the Divine Prefecture and the Devil World was very drastic. As a force of the ancient god clans, Tianyan City was similarly perfunctory. They had set a group of members to participate in the war effort, but very few of their core cultivators were among those sent. As for the absolute heir of Tianyan City, he had not gone out at all, let alone join the war. Right now, in the City Lord office of Tianyan City, there was a unique space. This was a domain of divine fire. Inside this space, it was an independent world. Wang Xiao of Tianyan City was bathing in fire and cultivating. He forged an armory zone in the space and was forging divine arms. Terrifying scorching currents consumed his figure, causing his entire person to be bathed with flame. His figure was constantly being tempered. What was even more frightening was that an illusory face seemed to appear in the entire spatial domain. It seemed to be observing his every action. Sizzle. As Wang Xiao forged away, the scorching divine fire poured over his figure, imprinting in his body. Gradually, Wang Xiao's body seemed to be formed from golden divine flames. It was as though he was clad in golden armor. He appeared extremely dazzling. "Ah!" yelled Wang Xiao. Wang Xiao let out a deep roar. He seemed to be in excruciating pain. His muscles were twitching all over his body. If you want to defeat him, a mere body of Wei is insufficient. You need to forge a divine body to stand a chance, said the illusory figure. It seemed to be spurring Wang Xiao on. Wang Xiao ground his teeth as he continued to withstand the pain. The pain gradually numbed his nerves. The terrifying divine fire poured down over his body. His body became more and more frightening. The entire region was a domain of divine fire. There was an external force protecting him. It seemed to come from the illusory figure. In Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian was cultivating in seclusion. Just then, someone came calling for him. Yi Futian stopped cultivating and looked at the person who had come. It was Old Ma, Palace Lord. Greeted Old Ma as he bowed slightly. "Old Ma, there is no need for formalities between us," said Yi Futian. "What has happened?" "Someone is looking for you," replied Old Ma. "Who?" asked Yi Futian, somewhat curious. Normal matters were naturally handled by Lord Chun and the others. They would not disturb Yi Futian's cultivation. If the person had come looking for him, That meant that the former was not just any ordinary person. "It is someone from the Dark Court," answered old Ma. Yi Futian revealed a strange expression. Why was a cultivator of the Dark Court looking for him? "The person who has come is very, very powerful. Even Lord Chun is not confident that he can defeat them," continued old Ma. Yi Futian nodded his head as his expression turned serious. It seemed that a major figure of the Dark Court had come. "Let's go," Yi Futian said. Regardless of how formidable a cultivator might be, they could not possibly act recklessly as long as they were in the Ziwei segmentum. This was a world under the absolute control of Yi Futian. The two of them left where they were and moved towards Ziwei City. Yi Futian did not bring others with him except old Ma. After the group from the Dark Court arrived in the segmentum, they occupied a palace. When Yi Futian reached the place, he saw several cultivators from Ziwei Imperial Palace around. Lord Chun and Feng Xiyuan were present too. Clearly, all of them were worried that the cultivators from the Dark Court would act rashly. "Palace Lord." The crowd greeted Yi Futian as they bowed slightly. Yi Futian nodded and said, "All of you wait for me here." After he gave this order, he went into the palace alone with old Ma. He stopped in front of a courtyard. Quite many cultivators from the Dark Court were gathered here. Two of them had unfathomable cultivation. Yi Futian glanced at the crowd and said, "What business does the Dark Court have with us?" "Someone wants to meet you," a cultivator from the Dark Court replied. "And who would that be?" Yi Futian inquired. "All of you stand down," a voice commanded. "Understood." The cultivators from the Dark Court nodded their heads obediently. They bowed in the direction of the room before leaving. Even the two top figures also nodded and left the place. Yi Futian was the only one left in the courtyard. Creak. The door opened. Yi Futian peeked inside and saw a slender figure draped in a cloak walk out. The person's head was slightly lowered, and the cloak veiled their face. This person appeared mysterious. The person seemed to be a maiden since she had a slim figure. Even though her legs were long, they were slender. She stopped not far away from Yi Futian. She raised her head slightly and stared at him with her jet-black eyes. After that, she removed her cloak and revealed her cold but beautiful face. Her eyes shone as brilliantly as the cold moon in the dark night, sending a chill down others' spines. One could faintly sense danger as they locked eyes with her. As Yi Futian looked at her face, he felt somewhat familiar, but he couldn't pinpoint who she was. Right at this moment, the maiden suddenly smiled at Yi Futian. Her smile was like a beam of sunshine in the dark world. It was warm and gave people hope. "Elder brother," she called gently. She seemed somewhat shy. Her greeting instantly pulled Yi Futian down memory lane. When the chaos in the original realm first began, the dark world invaded the hidden land realm. The gate of hell opened as the troops of the dark world descended. Yi Futian found a girl in the dark world. She was hunted by many parties and was always hiding. She did not have any cultivation, yet she could cause the death of renhuangs. She claimed herself to be cursed. She was born to bring calamity to those around her. Whoever was close to her would be doomed. Despite that, Yi Futian still brought her back to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Unfortunately, not long after, the Dark Court invaded the Heavenly Mandate realm. The Lord of the Underworld personally led a troop of the Dark Army to invade the realm and forced Yi Futian to hand the girl over to him. At that time, the passageway that connected all the worlds had yet to be activated, so the scale of the invasion back then paled into insignificance with that of today. However, the Heavenly Mandate Academy back then was similarly much weaker and could not withstand the besiegement. In the end, the girl chose to leave with the Dark Court. Their encounter was so long ago that Yi Futian had slowly forgotten about it. Yi Futian once named the girl Yi Qingyao. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 26-28. Heading to join the war? Chapter 26-28. Heading to join the war? Yi Futian revealed a dazzling smile as he looked at the somewhat familiar face before him. He said, "You are all grown up. I nearly did not recognize you." As he said this, he extended his hand to caress Yi Qingyao's head like he used to. Yi Qingyao's body wanted to move out of the way out of habit. However, she turned stiff and did not do so. Her gaze was somewhat excited. For so many years, let alone touching her head, very few people even dared to approach her. She wondered, if the members of the Dark Court witnessed this scene, what sort of expressions would they have? "Qingyao, have you been well all these years?" asked Yi Futian caringly. In his mind, Yi Qingyao was still that self-abased little girl that believed she would bring bad luck to those around her. Back when Qingyao was taken away to the dark world, Yi Futian was very sad. He did not know what future was in store for her. However, now that he saw that she held such a high position in the Dark Court, he felt more at ease. Now that he thought about it, he had given her her name. She had even taken up his surname. Yi Qingyao shook her head and softly said, "I have always been doing well." Regardless of what position she held now in the dark world, when she saw the familiar face before her, she was instantly brought back to the turning point of her fate. Before, she was merely an orphan whom no one bothered about. Everyone either bullied her or avoided her. Some even wanted to capture her. Her life was dark and gray, without a shred of hope. Although Yi Futian had not known her for very long, he was the most important person in her life. He had given her hope, and was a beam of light in her life. She would never forget the time when the army of the dark world invaded. Haze loomed over Heavenly Mandate City. For her, Yi Futian did not hesitate to wage war against the Dark Army. No one could imagine how moved she was back then. She always believed that the elder brother, who gave her a name, also gave her a new life. From that day forth, no one could take Yi Futian's place in her heart. For countless years, this emotion gave her the strength to move forward. She always held on to her unwavering belief. Although they had not met for decades, in a way, Yi Futian had always been beside her as she grew up. No one could understand this feeling that she felt, just like no one could understand the despair and helplessness of that innocent little girl in the past. "If she knew that it was you, Yaya would definitely be pleased," said Yi Futian. "How is she now?" asked Yi Qingyao caringly. Yaya similarly held a place in her heart. Back then, Yi Futian and Yaya had brought her out of her despair together. "She is doing very well. She is cultivating in seclusion in Ziwei Imperial Palace. Wait a moment while I go and bring her to see you," said Yi Futian. "I will go with you, elder brother," said Yi Qingyao with a gentle smile. The members of the Dark Court had never seen this side of her before. "All right," replied Yi Futian as he nodded his head. "I can show you around Ziwei Imperial Palace while we are at it." Yi Qingyao nodded. The two of them headed out of the palace. As they left the courtyard, silhouettes with very powerful cultivation silently appeared. They were the cultivators from the Dark Court. They all followed her. "All of you wait here," ordered Yi Qingyao coldly as she stepped into the courtyard. Her cloak veiled her face. Even Yi Futian, who was beside her, felt a chill run down his spine when he heard her command. Yi Futian knew that Qingyao was no longer the girl of misfortune from the past. He had mixed feelings about her. Back then, Qingyao was brought away by the Dark Court. Now she held a high position there. From the looks of it, her standing in the Dark Court might be higher than what he imagined. Unfortunately, Yi Futian did not fancy the dark world. He even felt repulsion toward them. However, did Qingyao have a choice to decide her fate? She did not. Would Yi Futian project his dislike of the Dark Court on Yi Qingyao? Certainly, he was not in the position to do so. Yi Qingyao's childhood was a tragedy. She was forcefully taken away by the Dark Court. She could not decide her fate at all. Understood. Nobody from the Dark Court disobeyed Yi Qingyao's command. All of them stayed put where they were. They also seemed not to be worried about her safety. The higher-ups in the Dark Court also vaguely knew about the relationship between Yi Qingyao and Yi Futian. Moreover, even without this relationship, if Yi Futian dared to touch Yi Qingyao, the Ziwei segmentum would be reduced to ashes. On the other hand, the cultivators of Ziwei Imperial Palace were very confused about what was happening. Why would their palace lord bring this major figure of the Dark Court away? "Follow them," someone said. With a flash, they went up into the sky and followed Yi Futian. Their pursuit led them back to Ziwei Imperial Palace. In Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian and Yi Qingyao came to one of Emperor Xia's palaces. Yaya was cultivating here. When she saw Yi Futian's arrival, she stopped her training and came close to him. She stared curiously at Yi Qingyao, who stood beside Yi Futian. "Yaya, come and see who has come to visit you," Yi Futian said with a smile while Yi Qingyao removed her cloak. Similar to Yi Futian, Yaya did not recognize Yi Qingyao at first glance. After all, Yi Qingyao was still very young when they parted ways. Both her looks and her temperament had undergone tremendous changes since then. "Elder sister," Yi Qingyao greeted. "Are you Qingyao?" Yaya asked somewhat dubiously. Yi Futian nodded with a smile. Instantly Yaya beamed with joy. She approached Yi Qingyao and held her hands, exclaiming, "You are all grown up now." "Yaya, are you aware of how many years have passed?" Yi Futian teased. What did she mean by Yi Qingyao having grown up? "Elder sister is still the same. Time has no effect on you," Yi Qingyao said as she stared at the familiar face before her. Yaya still felt somewhat surreal. She asked, "Were you cultivating in the dark world?" "Yes," Yi Qingyao nodded. "I have been worrying about you all these years. Now that I have seen you safe and sound, I can rest my worries," Yaya said with a smile. She could finally lift a weight off her mind. Yi Qingyao felt warm inside. There was actually someone in this world who still remembered her. "Qingyao, do you have other matters you need to attend to during your trip to the original realm this time?" asked Yi Futian. Yi Qingyao made her appearance for the first time after so many years. She would most likely have some serious business to attend to. "I have always wanted to visit elder brother, but I was not allowed to leave the dark court until recently," Yi Qingyao explained. "This time, I am heading to the Divine Prefecture." As she mentioned the purpose of her trip, a glint of dark aura flashed in her jet-black eyes. Yi Futian acutely sensed a terrifying death will from her. However, it disappeared in an instant. This caused his heart to tremble. Such a menacing death will. Qingyao was actually heading to the Divine Prefecture to join the war. Unbeknownst to him, Yi Qingyao was actually thinking about something else. She had heard rumors of many forces in the Divine Prefecture mistreating Yi Futian. They even attempted to kill him numerous times. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 26-29, The Reaper and the Favored Son of Tianyin. Chapter 26-29, The Reaper and the Favored Son of Tianyin. Yi Futian felt some conflict in his heart. He didn't expect Qingyao to participate in the war. Yu Sheng, too, would inevitably participate in the war on behalf of the Devil World in the future. His relationships with all these other realms were a little complicated. The Divine Prefecture, naturally, needed no more explanation. He had always belonged under the rule of the Divine Prefecture. As to the world of Buddhism, it was a place where he had gone to seek instruction and received a lot of teaching in return. At one point, he had even preached Buddhism, and Hua Qingqing had once accompanied the Buddha in cultivation as well. As far as the Devil World was concerned, Yu Sheng's relationship with him needed no more description. And now, Yi Qingyao held a high position of power in the Dark World. These relationships were now kind of a mess. Yi Futian didn't try to persuade anyone. Just as the Devil Emperor had said, everyone had their position to consider. He could not possibly control any of this. All he could do was tell Yi Qingyao, "Qingyao, if you are going to the Divine Prefecture to participate in the war, you must watch your back. The Battle of the Six Realms would be unimaginably dangerous." "I know," Yi Qingyao nodded. The three of them chatted a while longer before Yi Qingyao left. Soon after, someone below sent the news that Yi Qingyao had left Ziwei Segmentum with the cultivators from the Dark Court, presumably heading towards the Divine Prefecture. Old Ma. In Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian summoned Old Ma. Old Ma came over and waited on his orders. "On my behalf, tell everyone to monitor the movements of the battlefield of the Six Realms in the Divine Prefecture, and make reports regularly," Yi Futian said. Before, He had been concentrating on cultivation and the development of Ziwei Segmentum's prowess. However, as the war intensified, more and more cultivators were getting involved. Yi Futian was now starting to pay close attention to this battle of the 6 realms. Very well, Old Ma nodded, then left to prepare to send envoys to the North Cliff region into the Divine Prefecture. After Old Ma left, and Yi Futian continued to cultivate with his eyes closed. A few months later, a major event took place in Ziwei Segmentum. It was a major event that got everyone extremely excited. Aside from Yi Futian, and after the Supreme Elder, Lord Chun, Ziwei Segmentum had produced yet another giant figure who had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. More importantly, this person was none other than the Lady of the Palace, Huajiyu. Decades had passed, and Huajiyu had finally taken this extremely critical step. Nowadays, Yi Futian had the combat power of 3 major giants: Yi Futian, Lord Chun, and Huajiyu. They had quite a few cultivators in the first tribulation plane already, such as Emperor Shi, Morongyu, Taoist Monk Mu, Blind Tai, Gudonglu, Hua Qingqing, Chen Yi, Yang Wuxia and Fang Xiyuan. Such a terrific group of people, no matter where they were, had to be first-rate. Aside from the inheritance of the great emperors, this caste might even be stronger than any ancient god clans in the Divine Prefecture. Furthermore, now that Shin'i continent was also part of the Ziwei Segmentum, there were many top cultivators. If they were to be lumped together, the strength of the Ziwei Segmentum would indeed be even more astounding. Naturally, everyone in the Ziwei Segmentum rejoiced after Huajiyu had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path, but none of them were more pleased than Yi Futian. The 2 of them, husband and wife, were now both giants. Ziwei's strength was getting more spectacular. But at this time, news came from the Divine Prefecture of the Upper Worlds that the battle of the 6 realms had grown more fierce. A mysterious cultivator had emerged out of the Dark Court, known as the Reaper. Every time she appeared, she was hidden in a cloak, and no one had been able to see her true physical form or her face. But wherever she passed, living things died. If anyone so much as to stare her into her eyes, they would be eroded by death until they succumbed completely. Any place that the Reaper had appeared, the Great Path dried up, and the spiritual energy between heaven and earth was exhausted. Everything turned into death and silence without the slightest hint of life. On the battlefield, unknown numbers of cultivators had died in her hands. She had passed through some continents in the North Cliff region, and wherever she passed, no life could exist. For a while the people from the North Cliff region fled frantically. Even those who couldn't really escape tried and risked everything to run away. They had no choice. Staying behind was a dead end for them. After Yi Futian had gotten the news, a shadow loomed over him. Obviously, he knew who this mysterious Reaper was, Yi Qingyao. He would have never expected that Yi Qingyao would achieve fame so quickly, almost as soon as she stepped into the battlefield. And in such a dramatic way, no less, to be known as the Reaper. Once upon a time, she was just a sad little girl, abandoned by the world with no one to count on. Yi Futian knew that Yi Qingyao had changed. She was no longer the same Yi Qingyao that she once was. But he didn't expect the change to be so terribly drastic. The Reaper had sent shockwaves through the Divine Prefecture. Soon after, the top cultivators of the 3 realms, the Divine Prefecture, the world of Buddhism, and the human realm, began their mission to hunt down the Reaper. At the same time, Donghuang Imperial Palace officially ordered all the top forces in Divine Prefecture to join the war. Anyone who could kill the Reaper from the Dark Court would receive a handsome reward and the opportunity to cultivate at the Imperial Palace, receiving instructions from Donghuang the Great himself. Some principalities responded while some others chose to stonewall. But at this time, a group of cultivators came from Tianyan City and officially stepped onto the battlefield. After they stepped into the battlefield, they bulldozed over many cultivators from the 3 major worlds who had invaded the Divine Prefecture with deadly force. They were undefeated wherever they went, and the deterrent power of one ancient god clan seemed to be even greater than Donghuang Imperial Palace. And this was all because of one person. the favorite son of Tianyin City, the heir of Tianyin the Great Wang Xiao. For the first time since the several defeats that he suffered at the hands of Yi Futian, Wang Xiao appeared in front of the world once again and shocked them with his outstanding performance. The Wang Xiao who appeared this time was more terrifying than ever and was way too frightening. One could say that he had completely transformed and become another person. Even the city lord of Tianyin himself, if participating in the battle, would not be scarier than Wang Xiao. Wang Xiao, as he appeared in front of the world, bathed in the armor of golden flames, holding sky tremoring, descended on the battlefield like a true deity. He was above everything, and no one could stop him. In this world, there were very few who could claim the ability to totally harness imperial arms. Wang Xiao, in addition to his own terrifying strength, could control imperial arms. For a time, the name of Wang Xiao from Tianyin City once again resounded throughout the world, suppressing even the fame of the Reaper. It was as if he wanted to end the battle of the six realms all by himself. The news reached Ziwei Imperial Palace and into the ears of Yi Futian. Qingyao had become the Reaper. Wang Xiao once again, exhibiting his unparalleled majesty to the world, was something Yi Futian had not expected. However, even though he quite despised Wang Xiao from their encounters before, it was a fact that Wang Xiao could control the imperial arms. If it weren't for the protection of Ziwei the Great, Wang Xiao, as aided by imperial arms, was enough to sack Ziwei Segmentum. I am taking a trip to the outside, Yi Futian said to Hua Jiyu. Where to? Hua Jiyu asked. The Divine Prefecture, Yi Futian said. I want to go to the North Cliff region to take a look. I'll go with you. Now that my cultivation has elevated, I won't hold you back, said Hua Jiyu. No. Yi Futian shook his head instead and pinched Hua Jiyu's cheek. He said with a smile, that is a battlefield there. What will you do there? It's easier for me to come and go without a trace by myself. As you wish. Hua Jiyu didn't argue with him. If Yi Futian didn't want her to go, then she wouldn't go.